Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. I hope everyone is well. I'm joined by, mashallah, Sabur today, and we're going to be watching a very interesting clip of Alex O'Connor. We'll play the clip first, and then we'll discuss what's going on, basically.
You know, some people, especially as they get older, especially as they get closer to death, might think to themselves, well, okay, but what do I want here? That isn't happiness, aren't we often told a lot of the time by atheist moral philosophies like utilitarianism that happiness is actually the goal here? In which case, why are we doing these debates? Why are we like going around trying to convince people? I had a debate with Sabur Ahmad, a Muslim, he's part of like the Dawa scene. And at one point in the debate, I remember him saying something like, well, if you think that like maximizing pleasure, minimizing suffering is the metric for morality, then why are you here? Why are you doing this? Even if you think it's true that there's no God, if studies show that people who believe in God are happier and more fulfilled, then don't you have a moral obligation to shut up? He didn't put it in those words. But I remember thinking afterwards about that and thinking like, yeah, that's an interesting question. Maybe there is something about the decline of new atheism that's got to do with the fact that even if people still think it's true, they think, that it's going to make people less happy somehow, and therefore they don't want to spread it anymore.
Okay, so very interesting clip, bro. I want to start off by getting your thoughts on what Alex said in this clip. He's obviously referring back to the debate you had with him a few years ago.
Overall, he's evolved in his thinking. He's adapting to the new realities of the world. And what's quite nice about this clip is that you see he's internalized. I mean, there's one thing logically understanding an argument. There's one thing psychologically internalizing it and feeling it. And he's right because, there may be some people out there who believe in atheism, but they're like...
Summarize the main point here. What is the point he's contending?
Yeah, I mean, the point that I made in the debate that he's referring to is, well, if maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain is your paradigm, then if there are studies which show that belief in God leads to happiness, then why would you not adopt that belief? And this wasn't supposed to be an argument for God. This was an argument for why,
like a utilitarian type of argument.
But I like the way that he put it, even though he said that's not what I said, but that's what I meant. Which is, you do have a moral obligation to keep your mouth shut then. Because even if you believed it to be true, it's not doing the world any good. Now, obviously, I believe there's independent good arguments for God. This is not an argument for God. Some people understood this as an argument for God. Obviously, he knows and I know that this wasn't supposed to be. But from a purely pragmatic point of view, it makes total sense. And so what he's doing here in this clip is he's saying that got him to think. And I'm glad it did, because a lot of people later on in life, and after a few years when they mature, they realize, wait a minute, this isn't as clear as I thought. I need to not only take the brute facts of what's right or wrong, or what I believe to be true, but also the implications of my worldview.
Yeah, and I think I personally really like... I like Alex, I'll be very honest, right? I like the fact that he actually doesn't just put on a show for the audience. When he really recognizes something is incorrect, or there's an error in his thinking, or that he no longer agrees with a particular idea, he does correct himself, and he does go public with that as well, to an extent.
An example is when he made a video in which he criticized Hitchens and how his arguments were poor. Now, obviously, Hitchens is a huge figure in New Atheism. And there is, if you like, a self-interest within that community to maintain that we had this great orator and so on and so forth. But he came out and he said, I don't agree with this, I don't agree with that. And likewise with New Atheism, this video is called Outgrowing New Atheism, and people are seeing that he's changing his views. So I agree with this. This is
even
actually
with Dawkins, he's done the same as well. He's challenged Richard Dawkins at times on the sort of
I mean, he studied theology at Oxford. He understands, Dawkins doesn't even consider it a proper subject, but why from the beginning I recognized that this guy is nuanced and more sincere and more balanced is because of the changing of opinions. Now, sometimes what happens is people are like, oh, there's, about this person, or they change their opinion about this or about that, as if it's a bad thing, but it's not a bad thing. It's actually a good, respectable thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I think I said this a few years ago in a video that he's too intelligent to be an atheist. But I think I'd expand on that. He's too honest to be an atheist as well, because, like I said, like we've acknowledged, at times when he recognizes that he's gone wrong, or there's a view that he holds which isn't correct, he changes that. And he's public about it, and he's quite fearless in this regard as well, not really caring about how the audience is going to take it.
Well, he did that with the vegan issue.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, when he changed his opinion, he could have hidden it.
Yeah.
I mean, no one's there with a spy camera looking at him, but he made a public statement about it.
Yeah.
And this is, these are the sorts of things that, look, we will obviously disagree with him on many, many different things. But where there is convergence, where there is a segue for us to sort of agree on certain things or certain ways of approaching a change in your ideas, then we should.
Yeah, of course.
We should be,
I personally, for me, someone that's willing to change their view and is open to the idea that they may be wrong in regards to certain beliefs that they hold, they're the type of people you want to speak to, right? Yeah. You don't want to speak to individuals who are fixed in their ways or their views, regardless of the facts. Right. Yeah. And he's someone that's willing to do that. And we have planned in the past, it didn't work out. Hopefully in the future sometime we will sit down with Alex and have a chat privately, because sometimes it's good not to do this stuff.
Sometimes good to speak privately and then speak publicly, but long story short, these are the types of people that we should be engaging with in the dawah, because sometimes what happens is we engage with people that, in a way, we know that they're not willing to change their mind anyway, regardless of the evidence. And also, they're not evolving in their thinking. I don't want to get into who those characters are now, but sometimes we do end up wasting our time with certain people.
What is Alex? Does he consider himself an atheist now? I haven't been following his...
I don't actually know. Someone sent me this video in one of the groups, the Dawah groups that we're in, that he tagged me, and so... I looked at it, but I know he's been doing stuff with Christians. He's been doing some events. I think there's some sort of archbishop of some sort who he was sharing a platform with, and perhaps he's warming up to the idea of God. I don't know. Inshallah, inshallah he does come to the belief in God. But I really hope that his audience, because he does have an influence over a lot of young people. A lot of young people follow him. So I hope they also follow that line of thinking that, okay, I may have been wrong about this, let me think about this. And most importantly, what we get from this video is that at least theological questions are significant and require us to reconsider our positions.
Yeah, because there's huge implications. Let's be honest there, bro. Even if you're in the position where you don't currently recognize the truth of, say, God or Islam, the implications internally, are huge.
Yeah.
And these are things you have to really give some serious thought to. And it's good that, and I hope, he continues on his journey. Like, may Allah guide him. And I hope that the pressures of the audience don't get to him, because he has a huge platform and there's expectations. But I don't think they will. Looking at his current trend, I don't think they will. He has the courage, to if he changes his view or his position, to come out and say, this is where I've changed my views or my position. Yeah. And that's powerful. So I hope Alex carries on, on this trajectory. But I'd also encourage him, and I'm sure he would, to spend some time with Muslims. We're here, so hopefully we'll get in touch as well.
I'm sure when he was doing theology at Oxford, he came across Islamic thinkers. Yeah. And there's actually, I know he's been interacting with some Muslims in Oxford where he lives. And I'm sure he's going to be probably interacting with, Muslim scholars and other sort of people in the future. So look, it's the right attitude. I mean, yes. we sometimes make videos where you find somebody and you refute them on a point. But this video is not that. This video is we're just like, oh, this is nice. It's nice to see.
It is nice. It look like you said, recognize and appreciate the good, right?
Yeah.
And the way he's thinking about these things, the way he is moving forward with these things in a courageous way, not really caring about the impact it's going to have on his social media or his following, is profound, bro, honestly. So good on him for doing this. May God guide him. We're always open. I am, at least I know. I can't speak for everyone, and I'm sure you are as well, to sit down with Alex, whether privately or publicly or whatever the case, although I would suggest that it's private, at least initially, because that's when you really get to know the person and connect with the person. And it's no more about the cameras and the lights and the people watching. It's really about that person and you, to have that type of engagement. I hope and I pray that Allah guides him,
Yeah, and in regards to young people who are following him and this kind of thing, I would say, look, think about why thinkers as far back as the ancient Greeks or the people from the Indus Valley civilization, all these great thinkers in the great ancients, why did they take these questions as being very important? And why is it that new atheism, which is pretty much dead in the water now, which tried to just portray all of this as just nonsense and we're moving on in the age of reason and this and that, why is it that they didn't sway the public? It was bound to fail because of the same reason we've seen sociologically that when you have state atheism being applied as the Soviet Union did, and over time when it collapsed and people went back to religion flourished again in the Caucasus, it flourished again in many other parts of Russia, and the same with the former Russian Soviet states, in the Central Asian states, in Eastern Europe, religion flourished. Why is that? It's because religion is an inherent need of mankind. Now, that doesn't mean all religion's true, all religious practices are true, but clearly there is a inner God hole, or there is an inner intrinsic drive to worship something, which is why when we don't worship God, we end up worshipping something else. It's quite interesting. I was watching a video of what's that guy, man, the former MTV guy with the long hair.
I would not know his name.
Russell Brand.
Okay,
Russell Brand. So he's come to belief in God, and he was saying something about how all of us have this, like you basically do whatever you want in terms of hedonism. You're not going to achieve anything. And he was also saying something really interesting about we all worship something, right? Which, by the way, is a very Quranic thing, because some people worship their desires. Some people are worshipping false idols. And
some people worship themselves.
Yeah, and the false idols are not, we think a physical idol. It could be your ego. It could be you just do what you want. It's your desire. You can have all these false gods. And as one of the poets who you're doing a thesis on, Iqbal, he said this beautiful thing, that one prostration that you find difficult, it will free you from 1,000 prostrations. Meaning the one submission to the Almighty, the one submission to God, the one bowing down to God, the one total, when you single out God and say everything's for God, that will save you from having 1,000 masters.
Absolutely. Because look, even if you look at it pragmatically, right, from say a person's perspective that doesn't really consider Islam to be the truth per se right now at this point, if they're just pragmatically looking at the benefit of religion and the benefit of the concept of submission to a higher being, it's very powerful, bro. Because look, even logically it makes sense. If we go by what you said, that there's this inherent need to submit to something and to worship something as human beings, and therefore you are constantly worshipping or submitting to something or changing from one thing to the other, you really have a choice. There's a spectrum.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the choice is between two real things. Either you submit to something that's ephemeral, that's temporal, that's created.
It will never give you satisfaction.
Yeah, because that thing that you're submitting to or worshipping has limitations just like you have limitations. Yeah. Therefore, it can never completely fulfill you. Or you submit to the creator of everything that exists, the perfect being. And therefore, by submitting to God, what you're also doing is you're freeing yourself from everything else. You're no longer a slave to X, Y, or Z, or your own ego or yourself.
Society.
Right? Yeah, you're free.
Pressures.
You're as free as you can literally be in reality. That concept itself is very liberating. It's extremely powerful. right? So pragmatically, you can see the value of such an idea, to submit yourself to a higher being, so it frees you from the submission to all of these lowly or created things, right? And Islam has this concept very clearly, that you submit to Allah, you worship Allah alone. You don't worship your ego, you don't worship other people, other deities, other beings, created objects, the material world, or anything like that.
And you don't worship humans. So, Jesus for us is a human.
Yes.
And, sometimes when people turn away from atheism, they go towards anything. They become Hindus or Christians, as Muslims, we would say, focusing on God alone, and God not being, and I think this is very, very important, not a man in the sky with a grey beard sitting on a chair, something within space-time matter. None of that. God is absolutely nothing like creation, and He is one, and God is not male, not female, nothing, whatever you imagine, that's not God, transcendent, absolutely free of being in
need or dependency,
and being outside of space, time, and matter. So that being, which, by the way, and this is a beautiful saying of the Prophet, peace be upon him, that I'm paraphrasing here, reflect deeply on creation, do not reflect upon Allah, because you cannot comprehend the essence of Allah except by believing in Him. So I'm paraphrasing this narration. What it's basically teaching us is you cannot truly understand the essence of God. It's beyond the human mind, right? So sometimes the reason why people they give up on religion is because they have this concept of God, which again, when they turn away from these limited beings and then they turn to a God, and that God is also human and limited or human-like, then they're just like, well, I'm going from this to that. Do you understand? But the concept of God, the pure concept of God, which has always been taught by the prophets, has been that pure, pristine, clear, transcendental God, which is the most natural thing. It's so natural. There's nothing unnatural about it. What is unnatural is someone sitting on a chair and throwing down lightning bolts. That's unnatural. That's unnatural. And what is natural is the God that we're describing, the fully
a supreme cause, a creator of everything that exists. And even again, the pragmatic point, and I'm emphasizing these because I know Alex and maybe others are on this or stand in this position right now, that, what's in it for me type of thing. And every human thinks like this, right? But even pragmatically, bro, existentially, and this is where atheism fails. Probably, this is the Achilles heel of atheism, which is it cannot provide you the answers to the deep existential questions you have as a human being. Who am I? Where have I come from? What is the ultimate purpose of my life? These are essential things a human needs to understand to function in this world. Atheism does not give you those things. Right? And this is why, and with this other videos, I don't want to get into detail here, but this is why you saw the rise of the existentialist philosophers, because there was a need, there was a hole within people.
So, So maybe it's a good time to speak about your book.
Yeah, we can mention it, Dying to Believe. That's my journey to Islam, my existential journey to Islam. So that's there. You guys can check that out, Dying to Believe. It's on Amazon. I'll put the link in the description box below. But yeah, the point is that Islam addresses all of those existential questions. It answers them, and there are no... I spent a lot of time thinking about this, bro. Even in the recent course we've put together, the Grounded course, Being Muslim in a Godless World, it will answer all of the existential questions you have, but there are no loose ends. There are no contradictions, right? There's no, this makes sense, but this doesn't make sense. It all works together cohesively. It's a coherent whole. And this is something very powerful and very unique to Islam, by the way. Other religions, they will give you answers to certain questions that you have, but may fail on other perspectives. But Islam is very comprehensive from this perspective. And again, pragmatically, if you think in purely pragmatic terms, like what's in it for me, where is my ultimate happiness? Where am I going to find it? Islam is probably your best solution. Putting aside the truth question, Islam is probably your best solution, even from this perspective. So it's something for people on that journey to consider. But anyway, I think we don't want to make this too long. So anyway, to summarize, any sort of few comments for Alex if he watches this, or
people watching this, and anybody who's been through that, they've been through new atheism, and now they're sort of looking at, okay, maybe it wasn't as I thought. This is why people like Peterson became popular. They were speaking about meaning and value and purpose and these types of things. What I would say is, don't judge a cover by its book.
Don't judge a book by its cover. You got the other way
What's
around.
that heavy? That's that crazy thing that I ate before.
That's him not having his coffee.
Yeah. So don't judge a book by its cover, right? So, you look at Islam, you think, okay, suicide bombing, this, militancy, jihad, ISIS,
These are the narratives.
That's
that
the
people are
narratives,
spinning,
right?
Yeah.
But just stop for a second and think, well, why would Malcolm X, why would Cat Stevens, why would Sneeko, why would random people in the Western world who were brought up in a liberal worldview adopt Islam? There must be something about it. Okay, just use that as an avenue to look into it. You could, even if you don't want to go heavy into reading the Quran or reading other Islamic literature, just read, say, the biography of someone who accepted Islam. Right?
Yeah, it's a good starting point.
Malcolm X's biography, people have read it and become Muslim, even though it's just his journey to Islam, but people find that from that they find, okay, now I understand, like, okay, so he was thinking this and I'm thinking this and that kind of thing. So that's my recommendation. And with the internet, we have no excuse. It's not like 50 years ago where people didn't have access to all these things. Everything's online.
Yes.
Yeah.
Resources are at your fingertips, literally.
Yeah.
So hopefully this was beneficial, and we'll speak to you guys next time. Assalamu alaikum.